What if Rome never fell? In 476 AD, the last Western Roman emperor was removed from power. The Roman Empire in the West collapsed, Europe fractured into rival kingdoms, and the ancient world slowly gave way to the Middle Ages. But what if that never happened? What if Rome survived? To make this possible, Rome would not need to conquer more territory. It would need to fix the problems destroying it from within. So, let's rewind to the late 300s. The empire is divided between East and West. The eastern half is wealthy, urban, and protected by the massive walls of Constantinople. The western half is poorer, politically unstable, and constantly invaded. In our timeline, the two halves increasingly acted like separate countries. But in this alternate history, Emperor Theodosius makes a different decision. Instead of permanently dividing the empire between his sons, he creates a unified imperial council. The East is required to provide money, grain, and soldiers whenever the West is threatened. Most importantly, the Romans change how they handle the Germanic tribes crossing their borders. Rather than treating them as disposable mercenaries, Rome settles them in controlled military colonies. Their leaders receive Roman titles, their children are educated in Roman schools, and their soldiers serve under Roman officers. The result is not perfect. There are rebellions, assassinations, and civil wars. This is still Rome, after all. But the Western Empire survives the 5th century. Rome itself is still attacked, but it never permanently loses control. The emperors gradually abandon the city and rule from the safer capital of Ravenna, while Constantinople becomes the true center of the empire. By 600 AD, Rome looks very different. Latin remains dominant in the West, while Greek dominates the East. Christianity unites the empire, but arguments over religious doctrine constantly threaten to divide it. There is no single dark age across Western Europe. Roman roads, courts, tax systems, and schools continue operating. Literacy still declines in remote regions, but major cities like Rome, Milan, Carthage, and Londinium remain connected to the imperial government. And yes, Britain stays Roman. Without Rome withdrawing its legions, the Anglo-Saxon invasions are contained along the eastern coast. Britain develops into a Latin-speaking frontier province, protected by enormous forts along Hadrian's Wall. France never becomes France. The Franks are absorbed into the Roman military aristocracy. Their kings become governors, generals, and eventually emperors. The same happens with the Visigoths in Spain. Instead of replacing Rome, the Germanic tribes become part of it. Then, in the 7th century, the empire faces its greatest threat yet. Arab armies emerge from Arabia and rapidly conquer much of the Middle East. Even a stronger Rome would struggle to stop them. Syria, Egypt, and North Africa are exhausted after decades of war and religious conflict. Rome probably still loses Syria and Egypt. But because the western provinces are more stable, the empire has greater resources to defend North Africa. Carthage becomes the front line of a centuries-long conflict between Rome and the new Islamic caliphates. The Mediterranean is divided, but Roman naval power prevents it from becoming completely separated. Trade continues. So do ideas. Without the collapse of Western Roman government, there is no Charlemagne and no Holy Roman Empire. There is also no powerful independent pope ruling central Italy. The Bishop of Rome remains influential, but he lives under imperial authority. This means Christianity may never experience the same split between Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy. Instead, the empire develops one enormous imperial church, wealthy, political, and frequently divided by internal disputes. By the year 1000, Rome controls Italy, Greece, the Balkans, Spain, southern Britain, parts of Gaul, and the coast of North Africa. But it is no longer one centralized ancient empire. It has become a federation. Regional governors collect taxes and command local armies, while the emperor in Constantinople serves as supreme judge, military leader, and symbol of Roman unity. Technology develops faster in some areas and slower in others. Roman engineers preserve advanced construction techniques, plumbing, and road networks. Printing may spread earlier because educated urban populations create a stronger demand for books. But Rome's enormous bureaucracy could also resist change. Powerful guilds, landowners, and church officials might suppress inventions that threaten their authority. There may be no Renaissance, because Europe never completely loses the classical traditions that the Renaissance attempted to revive. Instead, scientific progress happens gradually. By the 1400s, Roman explorers sail farther into the Atlantic. A Roman expedition, possibly launched from Spain or Britain, eventually reaches the Americas. The people stepping onto the shore would not call themselves Italians, Spaniards, or Englishmen. They would call themselves Romans. But the empire would not last forever. No civilization does. By the modern era, it might transform into a constitutional federation with an emperor who holds mostly ceremonial power. Its citizens would speak dozens of languages, follow multiple religions, and argue endlessly over which province receives the most influence. In other words, Rome would survive by becoming something completely different. The Roman Empire would no longer be an ancient state frozen in time. It would be a civilization that never stopped evolving. And today, instead of asking why Rome fell, we might be asking how Rome managed to survive for more than 2,000 years. So, do you think a Roman Empire that never fell would have created a more advanced and united world, or just a much larger empire filled with endless wars and rebellions? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this alternate history scenario, subscribe to What If for more stories that explore how one change could completely rewrite history. Thanks for watching.